What's up, everybody? Pete Burak here. I know it's been a few weeks since the SFLi ended, and so I thought I'd jump on and just share a little encouraging word that came to me through this Sunday's readings. So the Gospel from the Sunday is one of my favorite stories in the New Testament, not only because it's one of the central figures is my namesake, St. Peter, but I think it's just a really great image of what it looks like to follow Jesus. The whole process that Peter goes through in this story is often mirrored in our life. And so I thought I'd just take a minute and break down some of the insights, if you will, that the Lord has showed me through this story, and then hopefully can be an encouragement for you moving forward in your life. So here we have this situation where Jesus has been preaching. He just fed a lot of people, the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes. And so he says to the apostles, get in the boat, go to the other side of the lake, and I'll catch up with you. And what does he do? He goes off and prays. And remember, this is part of the rhythm of the life of Jesus, that he is always looking for opportunities to commune with his Father. And it says that he dismissed the crowds. He went up in the hills to pray, and evening came and he was there alone. Jesus' ministry starts with solitude and silence in the desert, but it's a regular part of his life. He wants to still find time to be alone with the Father and commune with the Father. So should we. Very often, sometimes there's a desert experience that launches us into a new phase of life with the Lord, but that we need to go back to that solitude and silence to be recharged, refed, refueled. But anyway, the apostles get in the boat and they get out on the water. And the fourth watch of the night happens. So it's late in the night, which means Jesus has been praying for a long time. It wasn't a short prayer. It was a long time communing with his Father. But they're out on the water, and they're being beaten by the waves, where it says, for the wind was against them. Doesn't it kind of feel like the wind is against us right now, and that we're beaten by the waves in our lives? And there's always seasons of this. Sometimes you're on the mountaintop with Jesus, and you're watching him do miracles, feeding all sorts of people. And the next minute you find yourself kind of alone out at sea, beaten by the wind and the waves, going, where is he and what's going on? And then to make matters worse, they saw Jesus walking on the water. They didn't immediately recognize him, and they were terrified. It says, it is a ghost, and they cried out for fear. Like, oh my gosh, we're getting smoked by the waves here, and now we're going to run into a ghost. But he spoke to them. It says, immediately he spoke to them, take heart, it is I, have no fear. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, bid me to come out on the water, to you on the water. What a ridiculous thing to say. The apostles probably were getting accustomed to Peter's ability to kind of put his foot in his mouth. At any given moment, he says something brilliant, and then he says something not so brilliant. You are Christ, the Son of the living God. 7 verses later, Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Peter's the one who's up and down and all around. You'll see throughout the rest of the Gospels, he's the one who says, Lord, you'll never wash my feet. And Jesus says, I got to wash your feet. He says, okay, then wash everything. He's the one at the Transfiguration who says, let's build tents. This is great. We should stay here. And Jesus is like, no, we got work to do. Of course, he denies him 3 times, says he loves him 3 times. Peter's just all over the place. But one thing you can kind of consistently count on with Peter is that as his heart is transformed more and more with love of Jesus, he wants to be around him, which is why his betrayal is so dramatic. He follows him at a distance. Peter, who's willing to look like a fool to be near Jesus, in the moment when he most needed to be near him, he follows him at a distance. But in this moment, he's saying that, Lord, if that's you, then I want to be with you. And the other apostles were probably thinking like, Peter, he's walking towards us. Just hang in there. He'll be here in any second. Peter's like, no, if that's Jesus, I want to be with Jesus, even if it means going out on the water. And Jesus doesn't say, Peter, you can't walk on water. Just hold on. I'll be right there. He says, come. And here's this moment that all of us as disciples have to encounter, where Jesus looks us in the eye and says, come. Come. Step out of the boat. Step out of your life. Step out of your comfort. Step out of what you're accustomed to. Come be with me. Now Peter, who was probably pretty easy to say, Lord, if it is you, bid me to come out on the water to you. But now he's faced with a decision. Now he's faced with a moment where he has to decide whether or not he's going to get out of the boat, just like all of us. We have to walk to the edge of the boat, just like Peter. We have to get on the edge of the boat. We have to look down. We have to test the water. You can kind of imagine he walked to the edge and he sat on the edge for a minute, and maybe he tested the water for a second, and he's thinking about it. But then at some point he makes eye contact with Jesus, and he steps, and it works, and he's walking. He's walking on water. Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. He's coming closer to Jesus. And many of us have been in that position, right? Where we've stepped out of the boat and we are walking on water with Jesus, and we see him and we're amazed by what the life it looks like. But then, just like Peter, we see the wind and we become afraid. We see the wind and we become intimidated. We see our friends, we see society, we see our sin, we see the future, we see financial crisis, pandemic, and we become afraid. We become anxious. And what happens? We begin to sink. We begin to sink. And this is the most critical part of the story, in my opinion. Saying yes to Jesus, getting on the boat is absolutely fundamental. But what is guaranteed in the life of a disciple is that when we begin to walk on water towards Jesus, there will be wind, there will be waves, and there will be times where we do not respond to those wind and waves the ways we should. And we begin to sink. And Peter, in that moment, doesn't start to try to swim. He doesn't call back to the boat for a rope, help me. Doesn't ask for one of those little flotation devices, right? It says, immediately he cried out, Lord, save me. He cries out, Lord, save me. That is the posture of a disciple. Lord, save me. I can't do it on my own. I want to be with you. I want to follow you. I want to walk on water. I've screwed up. Save me. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying, and this is, I think we hear this instead of the way I think the Lord intended it. He says, immediately caught him, saying, "Oh, man of little faith, why did you doubt?" Kind of like, oh, I'm going to hold your head under the water for a little bit. Or sometimes we think Jesus is going to be like, man, I really wanted you to be the first pope, but I guess I'll have to find somebody else. Your name means rock. Pew! We'll see you later. No, he stretches out his hand immediately. And I think what you hear in Jesus's voice here is, oh, you were doing it. Oh, man of little faith, why did you doubt? Oh, man of little faith could be seen as a negative, as like an insult. But Jesus also says, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could move a mountain. So a little faith is a lot. And a little bit of faith got Peter out of the boat walking on water. And so Jesus is saying, why'd you doubt? You were doing it. You had a sufficient faith for this. You were doing it with me. And then it says, and when they got back into the boat, the wind ceased. Kind of classic biblical anticlimactic end of the story. But here's the thing. Jesus calls Peter out of the boat. Peter walks on water. He sinks, calls out. Jesus saves him. And then what does Jesus do with him? He leads him hand in hand, arm in arm, back to the boat. Peter and Jesus walk on water together. Where? Back to normal life. Back to kind of their mission, back to their community, back to their culture, back to their people, back to the thing that God had them to do. Jesus calls us out of the boat so that we can be united with him, that we can put our faith in him, our trust in him, so he can lead us back to our normal lives. But here's the thing. For Peter, life was never normal after that. There was no such thing as normal after you've walked on water with Jesus. Once you've been called out of the boat and you're walking with Jesus and he leads you back to your family and your friends and your community and your work and your mission, life is different because he's with you now. And you see him and you've experienced what it means to walk on water, not on your own strength, but with him. And you have to believe that the whole way back to the boat, where is Peter's gaze? It's at Jesus. He's looking at Jesus, and Jesus is looking at him, and they're going back to the boat. So today, my encouragement to you is first, find some time to be alone with God, just like Jesus did at the beginning of the story. Second, when you find yourself being tossed by the wind and the waves, recognize that Jesus is coming on the water towards you. And when he comes on the water towards you, he's going to call to you and say, follow me again. And maybe that's the first time, maybe that's 100 times, but he's still going to call you out of the boat to him. And when you begin to sink, when that sin that you thought you had conquered, it rises up within you, when the fears and anxieties of the world buffet in you and distract you, first instinct, cry out to Jesus and then let him save you, let him speak truth into your life, and let him lead you back to the boat. God bless you.